So hopefully you at least put it on your radar to get this book. You don't have to start reading yet. Your assignment at this point is to get it. Next week I'll tell you what you need to extract from the book, but get it next week. I'll kind of have you read with a purpose so you know exactly what you need out of this thing. The major grade test, it's going to be a one-day exam where you have the book in front of you. So it will be an open note, open book exam, but you will need to have it read prior to that. And we're talking like 6 weeks down the road. So right now, get it. Any questions about acquiring the book? Don't tell mom and say, hey, mom, I need you to buy this book, Founding Brothers or something. Because mom's going to buy you a book called Founding Fathers, and then you're going to like not read it and come to class with that and fail the major grade. So buy the correct book. Use the ISBN number that's detailed on the syllabus, and then you should be fine. As for the other stuff that I mentioned in class yesterday, Schoology, it's very well organized. Closing questions, some of you forgot to submit yesterday's. When you finish, hit submit. Otherwise, you didn't turn it in. And what's the penalty for a late turn in? 50 points off. So they're due every night by 11:59. Make sure that you submit them. Today, we'll be able to work in class. Just don't forget to hit the submit button so I have it on my side. You'll hear me say this a lot. Quizlet is your friend. I will extract all like the terms, the people, the years, the essential items from each week, and I make a Quizlet for you all. Some like to review it throughout the week. Some like to crash course it like Thursday, Friday before their exam or their quiz. But I would be getting friendly with Quizlet. I think knowing Quizlet and reviewing more than just a simple definition will pay dividends. And more than a simple definition, well, you have those objective statements. Just kind of know that these are prepping you for the short answer exam. I kind of lay out the short answer exam with these objectives. And for example, as you're reading these before a quiz or a test, I don't know, looking in the future, one might be compare and contrast the New England colonies with the Chesapeake colonies. Again, you don't need to know that now. But let's say right before a test, you read this and say, wait a minute, the New England colonies and the Chesapeake colonies, I forgot what the Chesapeake colonies are. That's like a major red flag because that would be a big picture item that you need in the memory bank. And that's telling you to backtrack and get that down or come for tutoring where I can explain it one more time. This Friday morning, I'll host, but you got to ask me some questions. So you have objectives, you have Quizlet. If there's anything that you need me to clarify, that tutoring time is ideal. So you've got a lot of tools at your disposal for your success. I don't design this class to fail you. But again, it is possible to fail, isn't it? How did my 11 failures happen last year? They didn't do their work. You got to do your work. You got to turn in the major grades. I mean, dumb not to turn in a major grade, yet some people did not turn in like that portfolio. And again, I had the kid that made the 0 for plagiarism twice. That's why I got the 0 in the entire course. So that's not good. But as long as you're working, as long as you're trying, as long as I know there's effort, it's almost impossible to fail. If you turn everything in on time, you're showing up for tutoring, you will not fail my class. You'll in fact do well. So hopefully this stuff is helping you. Again, do you have any questions or concerns before I move forward with some content today? All right, so with the content, I would say, I think the first thing that we need to approach is how you take notes. And I didn't lay it out for you of what I expect, what I require. Why? Because I don't collect a notebook from you guys. Notes are individual. So if you feel you learn best by using the Google Slides that are given and adding to that, go for it. If you like old school, you want a notebook, you want to write things out, go for it. If you feel that you can just sit, listen, and retain, go for it. So you got to find what's working best for you. But let's say 3 weeks down the road, when we take that 3-week exam, you get a 46. We're going to reevaluate your note-taking methods. And I'm going to be like, yeah, what you're doing is not working. You're going to need to try something else. So just think, you got to figure it out. College professors will not tell you how to take notes. It's kind of the expectation that you know by the time you get in college. Now, I'll kind of ease you into all of that. And I think it's easy in my class because I'm going to avoid something that I call death by PowerPoint. Did you guys in your Cougar blog today watch the dress code video?
No. Yes.
Many did. And that dress code video is the epitome of death by PowerPoint, because what they did is just fill this screen with words and then they read it to you. So it's like, New World Beginnings, how should I take notes? There, I taught it to you. Yeah, that's not good. So the way that I do things, you guys are going to see that my notes, you don't want to write down what's there. You want to write down what I'm saying. You want to write down what I'm emphasizing. If I'm like overemphasizing, ooh, this is always on the test, this is really important, maybe that's what you highlight. Maybe that's what you stress in your notes. But just writing down what's on the screen is as low as you can be. You don't do that in a college class. Again, you have the Quizlet, you have the Google Slides. Write down what I'm saying and what I'm emphasizing, and you guys will do well. And again, I might have a different style, a different method of delivery than previous teachers, but I think it will work out for the majority of you. You good with that? So I got to start you out 30,000 years ago, and I'm going to gloss through 30,000 years of history in less than 10 minutes. But I do have a question early on about how the first Americans got here. So that might be something to kind of start. So 30,000 years ago, the Bering Strait froze over. And you guys might remember the Bering Strait. The Bering Strait's what separates like Alaska from Asia. Well, it froze over during an ice age, and sure enough, people came over, crossing that frozen Bering Strait. And then the key question is, where do they settle? Do they all settle? All these people coming over from Asia, do they all like settle and stay in Canada because Canada's awesome? Is that where they all stay forever and ever and ever? No, where do they go? Everywhere. They scatter. There's diverse settlement patterns. So just kind of think, 30,000 years ago, yes, some stay in Canada, some go to North America, some go to the present-day great state of Michigan because it's amazing there. Some might travel to Central America, some might to South America, and you get diverse settlement patterns. Now, in that diversity, a few pre-Columbian civilizations stand out. And this, people, is where I'm going to tap into your world history knowledge. Think back to the good times in WAP, or maybe the nightmares in WAP. I don't know which one it was, but I need to know about some of these advanced civilizations because they pop up on some test questions. Is it there as you're going back?
Aztecs.
Perfect. I got the Aztecs and the Incas. And yes, they are advanced. I think Fleece, Mercer, Mondello spent considerable time on the Aztecs, where you could probably start, shouting out some of their specific, advanced traits. You might remember their capital city. You might remember things about their irrigation, their agriculture. It's kind of a different class, so I don't need it here. But I do want you to know that, wow, they're pretty advanced with millions. In fact, their capital cities will rival anything that Europe has. So some of these pre-Columbian civilizations, there's a lot of them, and they're advanced. Now again, this is kind of prefacing the whole course because we focus on North American history, but we do need to compare it to something. And you see these numbers here? Wait till I give you numbers in North America because they will pale in comparison. We're talking highly advanced civilizations, present day like Peru, present day Mexico. Don't worry about writing down the capital city. You did that last year. You remember some of your fun WAP details. You did that last year. My point is they're advanced. Architecture, political systems, irrigation networks. I mean, there's a lot going on. They're able to feed the masses with, have you ever heard of three sister farming? Corn, beans, squash. You can feed millions that way. And they've got, again, the irrigation to get the job done. Corn, beans, squash. Now, if we jump over to North America, how do those civilizations feed themselves? Do they have like a mass farm of corn, beans, and squash? No, they might be hunters or gatherers or might be more nomadic. And as a result, the numbers are going to be a whole lot less in North America when we compare to Central and South America. So again, we're just kind of getting some stuff that we can start comparing. And again, if you can see this picture, it's like, wow, that's a developed city. So if you got the question Friday, geographically, where were the most highly developed civilizations? You would get that right. Yes? Geographically, Central and South America. When we look at North America, there's a whole lot going on because we've got hundreds of different tribes. And no, people, I will not have you memorize every one of those tribes. You don't need to know the location of every one of those tribes, but I am going to pluck out a few because a few have notable characteristics that I'll hold you accountable for. But again, just kind of look at all the different tribes that are scattered and settling in North America. I think you should know something about the Comanche. And honestly, I think you already know something about the Comanche. Why? Because you took Texas history. And Texas history would have focused on the Comanche. Now, granted, you were probably a 7th grader. Maybe you're not even from here. But if you don't know, the Comanche were the dominant tribe in the plains. Like, these guys were the most highly skilled fighters on horseback. They could shoot 12 arrows out in a minute. And they held on to so much territory for so long until the Texas Rangers utilized a new, I guess, innovation in weaponry that defeated and then they expelled the Comanche from Texas. Are you remembering any of that fun stuff from Texas history? Would you know the new weapon innovation that the Texas Rangers used? I bet you do. Feel free to shout it out if you know the new innovation the Texas Rangers used. What did they use to defeat the Comanche? They use like a big old long rifle, a musket? No, they're going to have 20 arrows in them. Because think about it, a musket, like you're having to stuff the musket ball down, you've got 20 arrows in you before you can even load the thing. It's the Colt 45. So it's that Colt 45 rapid fire pistol that finally defeats the Comanche, and Texas is then fully settled by Texans, and the Comanche kind of scatter as a result. So I'd say that's notable about the Comanche. There's obviously more to it, but maybe you'll get a Comanche question. Maybe you'll get an Iroquois question. These guys stand out. Geographically, if you're geography challenged, these guys are in like present day New York, kind of right around here. And let me just fast forward and show you the Iroquois. They stand out because they're unified. They have like a political structure, a political leader. And the Iroquois have what's called a confederacy of different tribes. Don't write down those different tribes. Just know that the Iroquois are unique and that they banded together. And as a result, get this, the Iroquois, they exist well into the 1800s. A lot of these other tribes that you saw are like gone in 10 years, 20 years, quickly defeated, annihilated, pushed out further into the frontier and just gone. But the Iroquois, they're different. They are politically different. They are politically united. They are politically stronger. And that's kind of why they stand out. So you guys are actually going to see the Iroquois a handful of times throughout this course. We'll even be talking like War of 1812, and we'll again mention the Iroquois. So just the Iroquois, I know something about them. So we got Comanche, we got Iroquois. How about the Cahokia? This one stands out. And you might have seen this in the past, I don't know, but the Cahokia Mounds, it's like present day St. Louis. These guys are the most populated in all of North America, their tribe. So Cahokia is the settlement, and you can like see this is pretty developed, pretty advanced. But you recall those numbers that I was mentioning with like the Aztecs and the Incas? How many were there? Millions, right? So we're talking like 5-6 million Aztecs, up to 12 million Incas. Ready for your number for the Cahokia? This is the largest in North America, 10,000. Yeah, we're pretty spread out in North America. But this stands out because it is the largest in North America. You can see that they're, pretty developed. They've got these mounds, some, architectural innovation. Archaeologists, by the way, say the mounds could have protected from flooding. They're along the Mississippi River. You can see fertile soil. They've got some kind of like permanent settlement that is considerably advanced. So Cahokia, I would note something about that one. This one, don't write it down, just nod your head. Be like, oh, okay. In the southwest of the United States, the Pueblos, and these guys are notable because they're adapting to their surroundings. And if you see how they adapt, they don't have trees. It's pretty dry, arid, but they still are able to exist in a community. I mean, maybe like 500 live here. How do they build these homes, by the way? Yeah, that's like mud or clay. So they're adapting to their surroundings. They've got, I don't know, some kind of little farm. Again, don't stress writing down Pueblo. Don't stress, writing down their homes. You just kind of nod your head like, interesting. They're different than these other tribes that are around. There are even some tribes in cliffs. You don't need to write down Anastasi. But you're like, oh, they too are adapting to their surroundings. Pretty diverse as we look at all of these, yes? We got that. That's our key takeaway. Diversity. No matter where you look in North America, you've got different customs, different religions, different leadership, different environmental factors. We got a whole lot of different tribes. Hundreds, in fact. So keyword, diversity, diversity, diversity. And again, just think of all of the different ways they're diverse. I think I gave you a handful of examples that you can probably remember. Like how are the Iroquois politically different? United, right? How are the Pueblos and those like adobes different? They don't have trees. They build their homes out of mud. Now you remember yesterday when I said you guys made the right decision in taking DC over AP? I said there might be some Kush moments, as I call them. This is one. Why is this one of the Kush moments? Yeah, it was on the AP exam last year. Think about this, the first 10 minutes in class. The first 10 minutes of content on the first day, the College Board made this one of their short answers. So it's like, wow, that's hard. You're expecting retention from day one all the way through May. The question, by the way, was you had to pick 3 different tribes in all of the Americas and explain how they adapt to their environment and then compare and contrast like commonalities and differences. We could probably do that right now, right? Because I just said it like 2 minutes ago, but I'm looking at a few of you and I'm like, I couldn't even do that right now. Could you imagine doing it in May? The Kush moment people will have many. So I'll say this time and time again, and I'll give you examples of how the evil College Board has asked things, but this is just one of many of our D-Kush moments. So yeah, you might see it on a quiz, but remember, I've got a variety of ways to assess you. All right, focusing more so on the content for, I guess, today. That's a pretty clear answer, right? You've been programmed to answer this. Who discovered the New World? You could all answer in unison. You know it, right? Wrong. They lie to you. They lie to you so many times in your previous classes. Christopher Columbus discovering the New World. Well, there are like 20 groups that have been here well before Columbus, and that is well documented. There is like archaeological evidence, and nothing to really write down, but this and this and this and this and this are all like evidence of other people being here way before Columbus did in 1492. There's a theory that people from Australia came over to settle in South America, and they have evidence to back that up. There are theories that the Chinese came over, theories that so many others settled. In fact, 500 years before Columbus, we know a guy came over. Some of you are going to know this guy. 500 years before Columbus, kind of unique from like Iceland. You know who I'm talking about yet? How come we don't have a Leif Erickson Day? Because if we give Columbus all the credit for discovering America, we forget what this guy did. I mean, check it out. He comes over. It is well documented 500 full years before Christopher Columbus. Yet we have Columbus Day. We celebrate Columbus for a variety of reasons. We'll kind of zero in on that in a second. But hey, don't forget Leif Erickson and the Vikings. They're interesting. As for why Columbus is so important, I guess we got to know that everything changes. Like everything changes permanently after Columbus. So just kind of think of Columbus, the guy in the middle. What's causing Columbus to have that permanent colonization? And not just permanent colonization, we're talking like colonization and conquering and changing everything in his path. So what causes it? I got a couple of factors. We got the Crusades kind of wrap it up, but there's still a desire to spread Christianity, right? Which country sent Columbus?
Spain.
They're super Catholic. In fact, Spain is so super Catholic at this time, they expelled all the Moors, they expelled all the Jews, and they united under Catholicism, and they want to spread Catholicism. You guys remember from last year things like Gold, Glory, God? God. They want to expand Christianity. They want to convert the heathens. They want to convert many. So definitely religion is a factor in causing like this permanent colonization. We've got Marco Polo on the list. And I don't know if you remember Marco Polo, other than the game in the pool, but Marco Polo like travels and then writes about his travels. Do you remember what he writes about? Silk and spices and riches and luxury items, and ooh, the Europeans want that. So Marco Polo, we just kind of say, whets the appetite of Europeans, and they want this, but there's a big problem because you can't easily get to Asia anymore because of that whole Constantinople thing. Remember how much time you spent on 1453 in Constantinople? Well, now you need a new trade route. So we've got a combination of factors. A bunch of things are going to push Columbus to permanently change this. We've got religion. We've got the desire for luxury items connected with the need of a new trade route. And we got all this new technology that's going to make it happen. New technology like the compass. New technology like a type of ship that can sail into headwinds. So all of this, it's kind of on the backdrop of Spain's unification. And by the way, I'd say this, that Spain was unified and they were unique in their unification, because what was England doing at this time, like in the 1400s, do you know? They're in civil war. What's France doing like in the 1400s? They're in civil war. And on top of that, France and England are like fighting each other because they're always at war with one another. But Spain, hey, they're united. They're united under one religion, one belief, and they have a 100-year head start on everyone else. So it is Spain that is going to send Columbus over, and then that kind of picks up where we know the story, right? In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Yeah, my son learned that in like second grade, learning about Columbus, and he was, told stories about this with Columbus, like, yay! He plants the flag, he greets the natives, and then like, we have a holiday to celebrate Christopher Columbus. And that's all there is to know, right? Or didn't they just rename Columbus Day something? It's like Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. Because some people hate Christopher Columbus for what he did. And I think that's what we're going to delve into now. So that's it with my lecture, but I've got some story time with closing questions. And I normally don't go story time on you, but today I am, because it's pretty interesting. So if I were you, I would have my closing question opened up, and it's going to connect with what I'm reading to you. I'm going to read you two rival interpretations of Christopher Columbus. So one of which will praise him, giving rise to the holiday Columbus Day, first Monday in October, yay, let's celebrate the discovery of the New World. And the other might explain why some people hate Columbus and call it Indigenous Peoples Day, and they protest Christopher Columbus. You ready for some story time? All right, so have some, closing questions. Feel free to answer these as I'm going. Here we go. A Patriot's History of the United States. This, by the way, was recently written. It's a secondary source that uses some primary sources to tell a narrative about the guy. So let me go. Is America's past a tale of racism, sexism, and bigotry? Is it the story of the conquest and rape of a continent? Is U.S. history the story of white slave owners who perverted the electoral process for their own interests? Did America start with Columbus's killing all the Indians, leap to Jim Crow laws, and Rockefeller crushing the workers, then finally save itself with Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal? The answers, of course, are no, 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 and no. Okay, then it jumps into the story of Columbus, which I'll continue to read. Columbus departed from Spain in August 1492, laying in a course due west and ultimately in a direct line to Japan, although he never mentioned Cathay prior to 1492. A native of Genoa, Columbus embodied the best of a new generation of navigators, resilient, courageous, and confident. To be sure, Columbus wanted glory, and a motivation born of desperation fueled his vision. At the same time, Columbus was earnestly desirous of taking Christianity to heathen lands. He did not, as unpopularly believed, originate the idea that the earth is round. As early as 1480, for example, he read works proclaiming the sphericity of the planet. But knowing intellectually that the Earth is round and demonstrating it physically are two different things. Columbus's fleet consisted of only 3 vessels, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and a crew of 90 men. Leaving port in August 1492, the expedition eventually passed the point where the sailors expected to find Japan, generating no small degree of anxiety, whereupon Columbus used every managerial skill he possessed to maintain discipline and encourage hope. The voyage had stretched to 10 weeks when the crew bordered on mutiny, and only the captain's reassurance and exhortations persuaded the sailors to continue a few more days. Finally, on October 11, 1492, they started to see signs of land. Pieces of wood loaded with barnacles, green bulrushes, and other vegetation. A lookout spotted land, and on October 12, 1492, the courageous man waded ashore on Wakeling Island in the Bahamas, where his men begged for his pardon for doubting him. Man, this is a pretty courageous guy, right? He's a leader of men, a manager of mutinous men. Sounds great so far, right? Here's what the author's doing. He is using sources. You guys notice these numbers at the end of sentences? Those are footnotes. Those are citations. That's what you do in formal writing. And if you're reading like a history book, you encounter a footnote, and then you can go to the back and check out the source. You don't necessarily have to do it at your level, but keep going in history, and you got to like check out every single source, which I have here. And he is quoting some of Columbus's own words. He is quoting primary sources. He's quoting Columbus's own diary. There might be a problem with that you're about to see. Just think of how he's describing this discovery, and then wait till I read you the other source in a second. So just think to a few of the ways that he's using these primary sources, and then compare to the other guy that I'm about to read to you. So far, so good? Okay, let me continue. Columbus continued to Cuba, which he called Hispaniola. At the time, he thought he had reached the Far East and referred to the dark-skinned people he found in Hispaniola as Indians. He found these Indians very well formed, with handsome bodies and good faces, and hoped to convert them to our holy faith by love rather than by force, by giving them red caps and glass beads and many other things of small value. Dispatching emissaries into the interior to contact the Great Khan, Columbus's scouts returned with no reports of these spices, jewels, silks, or other evidence of Cathay, nor did the Khan send his regards. Nevertheless, Columbus returned to Spain confident he had found an ocean passage to the Orient. Reality gradually forced Columbus to a new conclusion. He had not reached India or China, and after a second voyage in 1493, still convinced he was in the Pacific Ocean, Columbus admitted that he had stumbled on a new landmass, perhaps even a new continent of astounding natural resources and wealth. I'm going to skim to the last sentence, where it says, historian Samuel Eliot Morison, a worthy seaman in his own right, who reenacted the Columbian voyages in 1939 and 1940, described Columbus as the sign and symbol of the new age of hope, glory, and accomplishment. The end. Chapter closed with that quote about Columbus. He is like the man. He is the symbol of new age hope, glory, and accomplishment. And check it out, the guy even quoted a historian. You think a normal historian? What did what's this guy's name? Samuel Eliot Morison do to prove he loves Columbus so much? He reenacted Columbus's voyages. So it's like, that's the guy that you want to quote, a guy from 1939 and 1940, a clear lover of Columbus that loves him so much he reenacts the voyages? Sure, he's going to say he is the man. Now just think about that in comparison to a people's history. This is going to use some of the same sources. This is going to use Columbus's diary. When you have the discovery part, just kind of check out what this adds and that omitted. You ready for it? So, A People's History by Howard Zinn. Arawak men and women, naked, tawny, and full of wonder, emerged from their villages onto the island's beaches and swam out to get a closer look at the strange big boat. When Columbus and his sailors came ashore, carrying swords, speaking oddly, the Arawaks ran to greet them, brought them food, water, gifts. He later wrote of this in his log. He being Columbus, his log is his diary. They brought us parrots and balls of cotton and spears and many other things, which they exchanged for the glass beads and hawk's bells. They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built, with good bodies and handsome features. They do not bear arms, and do not know of them, for I showed them a sword, and they took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. This guy didn't say that. They both quoted the same diary, but this added more of a complete little passage from the diary, where Columbus says he could do what to the natives? Enslave them. Oh, and that's, by the way, what Columbus does. Let me continue here. These Arawaks in the Bahama Islands were much like Indians on the mainland, who were remarkable for their hospitality, their belief in sharing. Columbus wrote, "As soon as I arrived in the Indies on the first island which I found, I took some of the natives by force in order that they might learn and might give me information of whatever there is in these parts. The information that Columbus wanted most was, where is the gold? He had persuaded the king and queen of Spain to finance an expedition to the lands. The wealth he expected would be on the other side of the Atlantic, the Indies and Asia, gold and spices. In return for bringing back gold and spices, they promised Columbus 10% of the profits, governorship of the newfound lands, and the fame that would go with a new title, Admiral of the Ocean Sea. He set out with 3 sailing ships, the largest of which was the Santa Maria, perhaps 100 feet long and 39 crew members. It was early October 1492, and 33 days since he and his crew had left the Canary Islands off the Atlantic coast of Africa. Now they saw branches and sticks floating in the water. They saw flocks of birds. These were signs of land. Remember the other guy kind of had the same stuff about discovery? There were flocks of birds, there's this, there's that. And then he kind of closed it by saying, yeah, Columbus was the leader of men. Look what this guy kind of details that the other one omitted. Then on October 12th, a sailor called Rodrigo saw the early morning moon shining on white sands and cried out. It was an island in the Bahamas in the Caribbean Sea. The first man to sight land was supposed to get a yearly pension of 10,000 maravitas for life, but Rodrigo never got it. Columbus claimed he had seen a light the evening before. He got the reward. This was to have enormous consequences. It led Columbus to take some of them aboard ship as prisoners because he insisted that they guide him to the source of the gold. He then sailed to what is now Cuba, then to Hispaniola. There, bits of visible gold in the rivers and a gold mask presented to Columbus by a local Indian chief led to wild visions of gold fields. On Hispaniola, out of timbers from the Santa Maria, which had run aground, Columbus built a fort, the first European military base in the Western Hemisphere. He called it Navidad and left 39 crew members there with instructions to find and store the gold. He took more Indian prisoners and put them aboard his 2 remaining ships. At one part of the island, he got into a fight with the Indians who refused to trade as many bows and arrows as he and his men wanted. 2 were run through with swords and bled to death. Then the Nina and the Pinta set sail for the Azores in Spain. When the weather turned cold, the Indian prisoners began to die. The Indians, Columbus reported, are so naive and so free with their possessions that no one who has not witnessed them would believe it. When you ask for something they have, they never say no. To the contrary, they offer to share with anyone. He concluded his report by asking for a little help from their majesties, and in return he would bring them from his next voyage as much gold as they need and as many slaves as they ask. Because of Columbus's exaggerated report and promises, his second expedition was given 17 ships and more than 1,200 men. The aim was clear, slaves and gold. They went from island to island in the Caribbean, taking Indians as captives, but as word spread of the Europeans' intent, they found more and more empty villages. On Haiti, they found that the sailors left behind at Fort Navidad had been killed in the battle with the Indians after they roamed the island in gangs looking for gold, taking women and children as slaves for sex and labor. Now from his base on Haiti, Columbus sent expedition after expedition into the interior. They found no gold fields, but had to fill up the ships returning to Spain with some kind of dividend. In the year 1495, they went on a great slave raid, rounded up 1,500 Arawak men, women, and children, and put them in pens guarded by Spaniards and dogs, then picked the 500 best specimens to load onto ships. Of those 500, 200 died en route. The rest arrived alive in Spain and were put up for sale by the archdeacon of the town, who reported that, although the slaves were naked as the day they were born, they showed no more embarrassment than animals. Columbus later wrote, "Let us in the name of the Holy Trinity go on sending all the slaves that can be sold." But too many of the slaves died in captivity, and so Columbus, desperate to pay back dividends to those who had invested, had to make good his promise to fill the ships with gold. In the province of Chacao on Haiti, where he and his men imagined huge gold fields to exist, they ordered all persons 14 years or older to collect a certain quantity of gold every 3 months. When they brought it, they were given copper tokens to hang around their necks. Indians found without a copper token had their hands cut off and bled to death. The Indians had been given an impossible task. The only gold around was bits of dust garnered from the stream, so they fled, were hunted down with dogs, and were killed. Trying to put together an army of resistance, the Arawaks faced Spaniards who had armor, muskets, swords, horses. When the Spaniards took prisoners, they hanged them or burned them to the death. Among the Arawaks, mass suicides began with cassava poison. Infants were killed to save them from the Spaniards. In 2 years, through murder, mutilation, or suicide, half the 250,000 Indians on Haiti were dead. When it became clear there was no gold left, the Indians were taken as slave labor on huge estates known later as encomiendas. There they worked at a ferocious pace and died by the thousands. By the year 1515, there were perhaps 50,000 Indians left. By 1550, there were 500. A report in the year 1650 shows none of the original Arawaks or their descendants left on the island. Yeah, that's a little different, huh? So how do we as students, how do we interpret two like rival descriptions of something? I mean, they both use primary sources, right? Is one more accurate and believable than the other? That's kind of the question that I posed to you on the closing. So go ahead and knock that closing out. Talk to each other if you're stuck on one, but how much time did I give you today? Not much. Yeah, 7 minutes. I feel like that is enough time. If you were answering some stuff as I was going, make sure you clean it up. Submit it by 11:59, and you guys are good. You good? I gotta put you in a seating chart really quick. So stay where you are.